Hey, what's up, Mavs fans? Kevin Gray, Mavericks pre- and post-game host on 97.1 The Freak on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me for my latest video here on Kevin Gray Sports. Be sure to like and comment on this video as well, and download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts for free. And you can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports as we react to the NBA trade deadline for your Dallas Mavericks as Nico Harrison and Mark Cuban were booked and busy today as they made a series of moves to help change the roster for this Mavericks team, and it looks like improve them going forward for the final 30 games of this season. A lot to get to on this episode, and again, make sure you like and comment on the video as well. As the Mavericks acquire Daniel Gafford from the Washington Wizards and PJ Washington from the Charlotte Hornets. We'll get to all the details and what it all means for the Mavericks going forward here. But we thought coming into this trade deadline that there were opportunities for this team to be able to improve, and that's exactly what they did. And how they were able to make it happen, we'll get into throughout the course of our time here today. But overall reaction, the Mavericks were able to make some moves that not only improves this team, but gives them versatility as far as their lineups and rotations are concerned. And if you're a Mavericks fan, you like now where this team is slotted in terms of their positions and their roles going forward for the rest of the year. The question will be, how quickly can the chemistry come together? And most importantly, will the health of this team allow that chemistry and continuity to come together with the additions of PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford? Let's start with the Daniel Gafford deal, which was the first one done today by the Dallas Mavericks. Now, part of this deal, now bear with me on the trade details because there's a lot to go through when it comes to that. But at the same time, the Mavericks have agreed to swap their own 2028 first-round pick with Oklahoma City's own 2028 first-round pick in order to obtain a 2024 first-round pick from the Oklahoma City Thunder. That pick will be sent to Washington to complete the Richaun Holmes for Daniel Gafford trade. So that gives you an idea of the compensation that was exchanged between the Washington Wizards and the Dallas Mavericks, with the Oklahoma City Thunder helping to facilitate that as far as the picks are concerned as well. And I've seen some of the reaction already, whether it be on social media, talking about the pick swaps into the future and what that could mean down the road. All of this is built, of course, on the timeline of making sure that you continue to keep Luka Doncic in a position where you're constantly seeking to improve this team, and they needed to do so, and were able to do it by acquiring Daniel Gafford. And that's someone that I've talked about here on this podcast that would be someone that the Mavericks could utilize if they were willing to move on from Richaun Holmes' deal and find a trading partner to do it in terms of Washington to make it happen, and that's exactly what they did. You look at Daniel Gafford and what he brings to this team. He's a guy that's going to bring you not only scoring as a guy that has a 70% true shooting percentage. He's going to finish around the rim, but you look at his per 48-minute numbers so far this year. Let's take a look at it. Through 45 games, my man's playing nearly 27 minutes a game, shooting 69% from the field, 71% from the free throw line. Not bad for a big man, but also giving you 4 blocks and also 2 steals and nearly 20 points per 48 minutes. So a productive player in the opportunities that he gets. And behind Derek Lively, you now have a guy that can not only finish at the rim, can also roll to the basket as well, but provide you some rebounding and some shot blocking on the other end as well. So if you're the Mavericks, you love this particular trade because now you have a versatile center on both ends of the floor that can play in that second unit and be able to not have a lack of presence in the middle. Derek Lively has been fantastic so far this season for the Mavericks with his rebounding, his IQ, and the increased in terms of his role throughout the course of the year, whether it be being able to play off of Luka Doncic in pick and roll situations, being able to finish out in transition. He's become a good passer as well so far through his rookie year. Derek Lively has been that much and more that you've expected from him so far this year. And now you bring in a guy in Daniel Gafford, who at 25 years of age is on a team-friendly contract as well, will now allow you to have that much more versatility in a backup role, going 6'10", 234 pounds, really providing you some real size. And so far this year, as you look at his numbers overall, 10.9 points per game, 8 rebounds a game, shooting 69% from the field. That's good for second in the league. So he's going to be an efficient finisher at the rim. He's going to provide you rebounding and shot blocking on the other end as well. and most importantly, some continuity behind Derek Lively. So what does that mean for the Mavericks going forward here? You now have a guy that can fit into your rotation and be able to provide you quality minutes when Derek Lively is not on the floor, and that's a massive deal for them based on what they've been able to do so far. And for the Mavericks, this is a tremendous move for them to get some depth and versatility behind Derek Lively. And now moving forward, being able to move off of Richaun Holmes' contract, the Mavericks are in a good position to be able to get quality minutes off the bench from their big man and resets the big man rotation behind Derek Lively. Now you have Lively, Daniel Gafford, Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleber as part of your big man rotation that you feel much more confident about going forward for the rest of the season. And if that is the case, that will be a really good thing for the Mavericks based off of what they do so far as their rotations are concerned in their front court. Because for a lot of us, it hasn't been necessarily the most confident thing watching Derek Lively leave the lineup. And you've seen the impact that he's had when he's not in the lineup. The Mavericks are much smaller, having to go to more small ball lineups as well without the versatility of having a quality big man behind Derek Lively. That is not the case anymore with Daniel Gafford now as part of this team. And you feel good about that moving forward. Now, if you're Jason Kidd, your lineups and your rotations feel a lot more better and with a lot more continuity based off of what you have with Daniel Gafford coming to this team. So I like this move that the Mavericks are able to make. Again, something that I've talked about on this show and on this podcast about the versatility that he could bring, the team-friendly contract that he's on. He's not going to be a free agent for quite some time. And he's young enough that he fits the timeline. And when you start looking at that timeline with Luka Doncic about to be 25 years old, you've got young guys when it comes to not only Derek Lively II as part of your team as well. You've got young pieces along with Josh Green and others that really fit what the Mavericks are trying to do. And for a team that hasn't been able to draft nearly as well as you've wanted them to, while yes, they've been able to hit on Luka Doncic, and now we're seeing the emergence of Josh Green, which we'll get to a little bit later on, because if the Mavericks were able to hang on to Josh Green and not have to move him in order to acquire a PJ Washington like they did, that would be a home run, and that's exactly what they were able to do, not only stabilizing what they have in terms of their big man rotation by acquiring Daniel Gafford, but now getting a guy in PJ Washington that will fit in seamlessly to the starting lineup alongside of Josh Green. Again, a little bit more on that throughout the course of the show. But now, as a Mavericks fan, as someone who watches this team, and for me, someone who covers this team, you feel much better and much more confident about what this team will look like moving forward now that they have legitimate front court help to be able to stem the tide when Derek Lively is out of the lineup, and you don't have to feel nearly as bad when he's not playing, because now you have a true capable backup center that can be able to step in for Derek Lively. Of course, he's still dealing with the broken nose right now, and how that informs you about the style of play that the Mavericks will continue to do. And that's another really cool aspect of Daniel Gafford. Your style of play that you have right now, we talked about Derek Lively in terms of the pick and roll that he's able to do. A really good passer out of the short roll, can provide you rebounding of both the offensive and defensive glass, while also being a guy that provides you rim and shot deterrence as far as being on the defensive end, but block shots as well. Daniel Gafford provides you that as well on the other end and coming over to this team. You don't necessarily have to change your style of play. A guy that can finish out in transition, can finish at the rim efficiently as well, can play in pick and roll situations, and should be motivated based on coming to a team where you're going to be playing with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, that you're going to get easy shots a lot on this team. And that's one of the things why you've seen Derek Lively be able to be so successful so far with the Mavericks is he's getting easy looks at the basket and being able to finish efficiently at the rim. And you're going to get a lot of those playing alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. Daniel Gafford should be able to see a lot of the same things playing alongside Luka and Kyrie, and even on second units when he's able to have those staggered minutes playing with Luka and Kyrie when they are on the floor or off the floor together. So for the Mavericks, this was a really, really nice deal for them, a deal that adds some depth to their front court, but honestly doesn't alter their style of play going forward either. And that's part of the chemistry and the continuity. Finding guys that fit your system, that don't disrupt the type of play that you want to have on both offense and defense, that will seamlessly fit into your rotation and provide you similar skill sets so that guys can feel comfortable about their roles when they come in. because it's difficult for a player sometimes when they come in from a trade. They try to do a little bit too much or get outside of themselves about the things that made them good before they actually went to another team. Daniel Gafford should feel really good about coming to the Mavericks and being able to utilize the skill set that he has and not have to alter any of those things as being a part of the Dallas Mavericks. And that will allow his transition to be much more seamless for him going forward for the rest of the season and going into next year as well. Because these moves were not just made for this year to continue to move forward in the Western Conference, but they were also made with an eye toward the future about putting pieces around Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving that provide you depth, that provide you versatility, but also allow you to continue to build on the timeline that was honestly accelerated by how good Luka Doncic was. And now the Mavericks, who have been, I think, trying to play a little bit of catch up with that for quite some time, are now feeling like they are in a much better position to be able to move forward with confidence in the timeline that Luka Doncic has put them in, because he's become a top 5 player literally each of the last 4 years, being a first-team All-NBA selection. And before I get to the P.J. Washington deal, let's give Nico Harrison some credit here. Each of the last 3 years, the first 3 years that he's been as a Dallas Mavericks GM, he has made bold, shrewd moves to be able to improve this team, whether it be moving on from Kristaps Porzingis to acquire a Spencer Dinwiddie that helped them make a Western Conference final run a couple of years ago. Last year, being able to get Kyrie Irving and being able to get him from the Brooklyn Nets to pair alongside Luka Doncic to be able to increase the offensive ceiling for this team. And now this season, acquiring not only Daniel Gafford, but that gives me to P.J. Washington from the Charlotte Hornets. P.J. Washington is another guy that we talked about constantly on this show, with the versatility of being a guy at 6'7", 6'8", with a 7'2" wingspan. He's been playing really well as of late, and a guy that gives you a legitimate starting power forward in this starting lineup. And for the Mavericks, that is something that they have desperately needed as a part of their starting 5. And now when you look at the starting 5 with Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, now you have Luka, Kyrie, Josh Green. I would imagine P.J. Washington slides in as that natural power forward at the 4 spot. And then, of course, you have Derek Lively, which sets up a really nice 10-man rotation, because one of the beauties of the trades that the Mavericks made today was the fact that now with Luka, Kyrie, Josh Green, P.J. Washington, and Derek Lively as your starting 5, everyone now is in their natural position and role to be able to fit seamlessly in how the Mavericks want to play on both offense and defense. Can P.J. Washington continue to raise his defensive ceiling, especially as a 4? And if he can, now you feel really good, especially with Josh Green turning the corner offensively. How he continues to improve on the defensive end will still remain a question. But you look at the next 5 for your team, you're looking at guys like Derrick Jones Jr., Dante Exum, Tim Hardaway Jr., Daniel Gafford, Maxi Kleber. Your next 5 coming off the bench really provides you continuity and chemistry as well. And again, everyone sliding into their natural role and position within this team. So now you've got defined roles for your starting 5, defined roles for your next 5 coming off the bench. You may want to have another backup point guard to provide some ball handling now that you moved on from Seth Curry as well. But more importantly, you've got guys that fit the identity of what you want to do from an offensive and defensive standpoint. And that is terrific when you look at the Mavericks and the roster composition based on what they had to acquire, what they did acquire, and now how that moves forward for Jason Kidd and this team to be able to put forward together consistency on a night-to-night basis. And let's look at the details from the P.J. Washington deal. Now, the Mavericks, I give them credit. They made a move to go get Grant Williams at the beginning of this season, of course. They acquired him during the last offseason, brought him in, and thought with the idea that he could come in, guard multiple positions, be a knockdown shooter from the three-point line, that he would be able to provide what the Mavericks were looking for from a defensive standpoint, and a guy who can knock down wide-open shots. After the first month of the year, it really went south for him, and he never really recovered. After that first month of the season, he was shooting 50% from 3, playing the kind of defense and shooting from the three-point line that you wanted from him, and you thought, oh, this is the kind of player that has not only been able to assimilate with this team, but also increase his role coming over from Boston, where he thought he would have an elevated role with this team. But shortly after that, things just went south. He lost his starting spot in the rotation with the emergence of Derrick Jones Jr. and Dante Exum outplaying him and then inserting themselves into the starting lineup. Obviously, did not come into the kind of shape that you wanted him to. Injuries took a toll on him a little bit as well, and he was never able to find the consistency that he needed in order to be a part of this team. And now he's been moved on, and I give the Mavericks credit for this. They looked at a situation with Grant Williams, they saw that it wasn't working, and they were decisive and decided to move on from him. They could have easily stuck with Grant Williams for the rest of the season to see if things would eventually turn around for him, for him to be a part of this team on a consistent basis from a rotation standpoint. And they simply couldn't wait anymore and decided that it would be better to move on now, especially when a team like Charlotte coveted his services based on what he could do for them. Still a young player at 24, 25 years old that can help Charlotte be able to move forward in terms of what their plans are going forward as a franchise. But for the Mavericks, they had to find a guy that would be a natural power forward position player to be able to provide versatility, scoring, rebounding, can knock down some threes, but also provide you some size in the starting lineup in that front line. And I'm not necessarily concerned about PJ Washington, whether it be 6'7" or however you want to characterize it. He's got a 7'2" wingspan. And for him, another guy that should be motivated with a change of scenery, being able to come to Dallas. He knows the DFW area well, went to high school in Frisco before moving on and finishing out high school elsewhere. But he also trains at DFW as well. So a homecoming for him, and you even saw it on his Instagram. He's excited to be coming home to the DFW area, and I think you will get the most out of him based on what he is wanting to provide for this team. So look, you move on from Grant Williams, Seth Curry. Let's stop there for just a second. I'm sure Seth Curry is sick of signing with the Dallas Mavericks because every time Seth Curry signs with this team, he is somehow part of a trade that sees him out of there and gone somewhere else. But at least this time, he gets to go home to Charlotte, of course. Del Curry, his father, played with the Charlotte Hornets for quite some time, and his famous brother, Stephen Curry, obviously knows the area well as well. So for Seth, I hope for him, he finds some peace because I'm sure he doesn't want to be in a Dallas Maverick uniform ever again. But at the same time, the Mavericks made some really nice moves here, and we'll detail more of it here on the other side of the break. Let's take a quick break here on Inside the Mavs, and let's hear a word from today's sponsor of our episode. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs as the Mavericks make two big deals at the NBA trade deadline to acquire Daniel Gafford from the Washington Wizards and also PJ Washington from the Charlotte Hornets. And we were talking about it a little bit earlier. Based off of what this team has been able to acquire, now everyone is able to slot in their natural positions. And if you're Luka Doncic, you feel good about the lineup that you're going to be able to put out there night in and night out. Luka and Kyrie's offensive chemistry, we know, is spectacular when both of them are healthy and in the lineup. Josh Green's emergence now has been spectacular, especially knocking down corner threes and being able to finish in transition. Can he continue to increase his defensive ceiling to give you more confidence that he can be a better defender on the perimeter night in and night out? I'm assuming with PJ Washington coming over that he'll be a part of the starting lineup as well with the versatility that he brings. And he's going to get a lot of wide open looks from Luka and Kyrie with their playmaking abilities and just the amount of attention that they draw from the defense that will allow them to have opportunities to give PJ Washington open shots to be able to get to the basket and make things happen. And then for Derek Lively II, being able to play next to a legitimate power forward will also make things easier for him. And the communication, both offensively and defensively, will need to obviously grow based on what they want to do going forward from here. They've got 30 games to figure this out with the new players that they have, who they've decided to move on from. And again, from Nico Harrison and Mark Cuban in this front office, the decisions that they've made with the decisiveness in which they did it with should be commended, especially for Nico Harrison, who continues to try to find ways to improve this team. There have always been questions about how this Mavericks front office has been able to move forward to try and improve this basketball team. But so far in the Nico Harrison era, they have decided that when they've wanted to make moves, they've been shrewd in doing so. And when you look at the front office and how they're comprised with Michael Finley, Andrew Baker, Dennis Lindsey as part of that front office brass for the Dallas Mavericks, they have put together some moves, whether it be getting Derek Jones, getting Dante Exum, and now making the moves and getting Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington as well. They have put together a good roster that I feel like increases their ceiling based off of what they have moving forward here. Going now for the rest of the season, how quickly does all of this come together? Because no matter what kind of moves that you make, moving on from a Grant Williams, moving on from a Seth Curry, being able to move off of the Richaun Holmes contract as well. And yes, the draft compensation, which will be much debated and talked about, all of those things will continue to worry about themselves as we get to the future. But for the immediate, not only for this year, but also next year, this is the team that you're going to be looking at for the most part going forward here. And yes, when we get to the summer, they'll have hopefully a couple of picks to be able to utilize, especially once that New York pick finally conveys and they are able to rid themselves fully of the Kristaps Porzingis trade once and for all. So the future appears to be a little bit brighter based off of what it was before we came into the NBA trade deadline and now what it looks like afterwards with the acquisitions of Gafford and Washington. And while you may balk at the idea that they had to give up the 2027 first-round pick, what they were able to do is retain Josh Green and not to give him up. We had heard reporting that the Charlotte Hornets were wanting potentially to get Josh Green and a first-round pick. The Mavericks were able to not only acquire PJ Washington, but they sent a lightly protected first-round pick, of course, in 2027. What that means going forward, time will tell based off of what that pick may become. But at the same time, the Mavericks did what they had to do, and I said it coming into the trade deadline. This team could not force a move. They could not put themselves in position to make a bad trade. Yes, they needed to make a move to improve this team, but what they simply could not do is play into a sense of desperation and make a bad move that set them back based off their roster composition and what they were trying to achieve moving forward to improve this roster. The moves that they made at the NBA trade deadline allow them to keep their continuity with the young core that they have when it comes to Jaden Hardy and Josh Green as well, alongside Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving and Derek Lively, with Luka, Kyrie, and Lively being part of your big three. But you were also able to fit and find players that met certain needs that you had that you've been looking to solve for quite some time. In the case of Gafford, rebounding, a backup center presence that can score and can finish at the rim. And in the case of PJ Washington, a power forward with size, scoring ability, and hopefully an increased defensive ceiling that allows him to be much better and much more confident as a player on both ends of the floor. So for me, the Mavericks hit a home run here based on their NBA trade deadline moves and what they had to do to ensure that they improved this team on the needs that they had, and they absolutely did that. Could there be more coming in terms of the buyout market? Spencer Dinwiddie, who knows? We've heard reporting already that the Lakers may be in pursuit of Spencer Dinwiddie to try to sign him for the rest of the regular season, but that's another conversation for another time. The Mavericks did what they had to do to improve this team. I like the moves that they made. And more importantly, the Mavericks now should feel good about their roster composition and what they're able to do moving forward for the rest of the season. This team I like, and I like a lot. We've talked about it earlier already with the chemistry and the continuity where everyone slides into and the way that they are able to put together the rotations night in and night out. And for Jason Kidd, there's a lot of versatility and roster flexibility as well with the way that he can mix and match his lineups and rotations night in and night out. And most importantly, can this team get healthy? And can they remain healthy for the rest of the season? Because if they can, now you and I can have real conversations about whether or not this team can make a run to the top 6 of the Western Conference and stay within the top 6 and have to avoid and be able to avoid, I should say, the play-in tournament. Because if they can, now you can feel good about whether or not they can make some noise in the Western Conference playoffs. And I think the moves that they made with Gafford and PJ Washington make me feel good about their ability to make some noise and find what they're looking for. It's been a long road for them to try and get here to this particular point to feel good about their roster based off of Luka and Kyrie now being the two guys that are leading your team. And Derek Lively's emergence has really helped this team in terms of the confidence of a building block, a young building block going forward. So think about it. Luka Doncic at 24, 25 years of age. Derek Lively at 19 years old. You've got Daniel Gafford at 25 years old. You've got PJ Washington at 25 years old as well. Jaden Hardy, a young player in his early 20s as well. Josh Green, the same. You're putting together young pieces that will grow together, find chemistry together, and most importantly, be together for the long term, especially in the case of Josh Green and his emergence. Jaden Hardy's been playing better as of late. And this is how good teams build. Young, really nice players that are on team-friendly deals. You've got your superstar, obviously, and Luka Doncic spearheading this entire team. But you've now got tradable pieces if you need to find something bigger going forward. But most importantly, you have a foundational team based on the identity that you want to set for your culture, but now how they execute night in and night out. And for the Mavericks, that to me is the biggest part of the vision here. There is a clear, defined vision for what the Mavericks are wanting to do based on the players that they have, the way that they've acquired them, the assets now they have to be able to make things happen going forward for the future as well. But the ability for all of these players to grow together to find the consistency that allows them to build what they believe is a championship organization led by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving. You've got a mix of veteran guys, obviously, with Dwight Powell and Maxi Kleber, with Kyrie Irving being your best veteran player that you have, and a young superstar in Luka Doncic who is getting to his prime and obviously a player that you could build your franchise around. And the pieces that they have now fit seamlessly with what Luka Doncic's game is. A 3-level scorer that's a terrific passer that can make plays not only for himself, but for his teammates, and for Kyrie Irving being able to play off of that as a second scorer that could take the scoring load off of Luka Doncic, also be a playmaker and a facilitator with guys that can knock down shots in the starting lineup with guys like Josh Green, but also off the bench as well with Tim Hardaway Jr., Dante Exum emerges as a three-point shooter once he gets back healthy as well, and all the things that you get from a Daniel Gafford in terms of his backup presence at the center position. I feel really good about this team and much better about them now than I did a week ago based on all the conversations that we've been having about this team and what they are and what they weren't before the NBA trade deadline. And now with the trades that they've made, let's see how it all comes together. They've got 30 games to figure it out as they move forward for the rest of the season. Jason Kidd now has to make sure that he is being a plus for this team, because for Mavericks fans who look at this team and see the type of talent that they now have, can Jason Kidd elevate his coaching aspects to be able to put this team in position to succeed night in and night out? Because there have been questions about whether or not he can do so. And if he can get the most out of this team defensively and offensively every single night, you should feel good about this roster going forward for the rest of the year, led by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving, and now the new acquisitions of those PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. So to sum it all up, the Mavericks hit a home run at the NBA trade deadline, and they should feel really proud about the work that they've done, not only this NBA trade deadline, but also going back to the beginning of the season and toward the NBA draft as well, where they were able to get Derek Lively. And the move, yes, while you may not like tanking and the way that the Mavericks went down to get to Derek Lively, it was clearly the right decision to do what they did. And now with Derek Lively, Luka Doncic, and the young pieces that they have along with Kyrie Irving, this team feels much more set up for success going forward for the rest of the year and into the short term and possibly long-term future as well. So I really enjoyed this NBA trade deadline. A lot of reaction that will still come and continue to flow about this team moving forward from here. But at the same time, the Mavericks are better today than they were before the NBA trade deadline, and that's all that you can ask for. And decisiveness and the decision-making that they did to get to this point, Mavericks fans should feel good about their roster going forward from here. Appreciate you joining me here on Inside the Mavs on Kevin Gray Sports. Again, download and subscribe to the Inside the Mavs podcast, the official Mavericks podcast on 97.1 The Freak, the official Mavericks podcast on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports, and also like and comment on this video as well. Let me know your thoughts on how you felt things went down for the Mavericks at the NBA trade deadline, and I'll talk to you later. Peace.